Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into satin slippers and a slowly unravelling nightmare, the kind where the lace itches. The air smells like waxy perfume, and you're just 14 years old, shivering in a dress so heavy it could anchor a ship, with no idea that a hungry country is already sharpening its teeth in your name. You're not Marie Antoinette. Not yet. Right now, you're still Maria Antonia Josepha Johanna of Austria, youngest daughter of the Holy Roman Empress. Technically still a child, but about to be unwrapped like a diplomatic offering and served, with decorum, to the French. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. I love seeing how far this sleepy little time machine reaches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your shoes are new and hate you. Your ankles ache. Your toes curl against silk linings that bite back with every jolt of the carriage. You're sitting upright in a gilded box, surrounded by chaperones and courtiers who smell like lavender and tension. Outside, France inches closer with every hoofbeat, but it might as well be the moon. The coach sways like it's drunk. It rattles over frozen mud and past barren trees, their limbs clawing the grey sky like they're trying to warn you. No birds, no children waving, just the rhythmic clop of horses and the occasional, jarring squeal of wheels protesting the weight of history. Your mouth is dry. No one offers water. It wouldn't be proper. And if you asked, they'd smile with powdered lips and make a note in some ledger that you are overly familiar. You're not allowed to be thirsty, or tired, or human. You're Austria's youngest daughter, the one they saved for last. Not because you were special, because you were expendable. Your mother, Empress Maria Theresa, runs Europe like a stern governess. 11 of your siblings have already been shuffled into thrones and treaties. You're simply the next pawn on the board. She's chosen your husband for you, the heir to the French throne. A quiet, soft-faced boy named Louis Auguste. They say he collects locks and fiddles with clocks. They don't say if he'll like you. It doesn't matter. You are not here to be liked. You are here to anchor an alliance, to give birth to France's future, to smile through your own erasure. The cold creeps in through the seams of the coach. You pull your shawl tighter. It's Austrian wool. You wonder if it, too, will be taken away. The convoy halts suddenly, a ripple of motion. Voices outside. Then a breathless lady-in-waiting announces, with theatrical reverence, that you've arrived at the Ile des Échanges, the island of exchange, a small, damp patch of land wedged between Austrian and French territory, dressed up with white canvas and diplomatic self-importance. They've built a temporary pavilion here, part wedding altar, part customs checkpoint, part stage. You're the only act, no audience but the most powerful people in two empires, and they're here to watch you transform. The ritual begins. You're led inside the pavilion. Inside. It's freezing. The walls are linen, the wind slips through, and the floor is damp boards that creak under velvet shoes. There is no fire. That would be too warm, too Austrian. This moment is meant to be cold. The Austrian delegation, your people begin to undress you. Not figuratively, not symbolically. Literally. Your necklace is removed. Your earrings. Your rings. Your gloves. The embroidery on your sleeves is unfastened. Your gown, layered and stiff with whalebone, is unhooked in silence. A French lady hands you a new corset, slightly tighter. You're not allowed to keep your shoes. Not even your underthings. They say this is protocol, a full stripping of foreign influence, but it feels like a robbery disguised as politeness. You're standing half naked in front of strangers, and the word diplomatic does nothing to stop the chill crawling up your spine. Your attendants cry softly as they replace each item with French equivalents, French silks, French slippers, a perfume that smells like crushed violets and boiling sugar. Your language is the next thing to go. From this moment on, German is forbidden. You will speak only French. You smile and say, merci. It sounds wrong in your mouth. Your teeth clack slightly from nerves. Someone hands you a mirror. You almost don't recognize the girl in it. The French ambassador steps forward and announces, with great ceremony, your new name and title, Marie Antoinette, Dauphine of France. There's polite applause. You do not clap. They escort you to a new carriage, smaller, French-made, gilded with excessive confidence. The wheels start turning before you're fully seated. The trees look different now, more brittle, the land flatter, the sky paler, like it's been watered down. You wonder if the sun shines differently in France, or if it's just your imagination. In the distance, somewhere beyond those horizon lines, is Versailles, a palace so large it devours forests and fountains alike, where mirrors are more common than privacy and gossip echoes louder than prayers. But before you reach it, there are banquets, balls, appearances. You're paraded through towns like a holy relic in a glass case. People stare, some throw flowers, others throw words, sharp ones. You're too young, too Austrian, too expensive. Your smiles begin to ache. You try writing a letter to your mother, but your handwriting is critiqued by your tutor and your content by your governess. Too sentimental, she sniffs. Try to sound more grateful. You start again. You use shorter sentences. That night, alone in your new bed, you curl beneath a duvet that smells like lavender and starch. You miss your pug. They wouldn't let you bring him, said he was uncouth. Sent him back with your chambermaid. He was the only thing that felt like home. The bed is too large, the ceiling too high. You feel like a coin dropped in a marble bowl. Small, cold, spendable. Sleep doesn't come, but the dawn does early and loud. A dozen servants enter before sunrise. They open the curtains with sharp flourishes. They speak softly but constantly. You're observed while you sleep, woken with ceremony, and dressed with choreography. Every gesture is a performance. Even yawning requires permission. By midday, you are rehearsing your curtsy for the king, not your husband, the current king. Louis XV, he will judge your smile, your posture, your fertility, not with malice, just calculation. You're not a person to them. You're France's future womb. When you finally meet the Dauphin, your future husband, he avoids eye contact. He mumbles a welcome. He bows too quickly. His hand is clammy. He smells like sweat and wine and something vaguely metallic, like tools. You try to make a joke about the weather. He chuckles once, then excuses himself to go hunting. You're left smiling at a velvet chair. The rest of the day is a blur of etiquette, embroidery, and aching cheeks. At dinner, you're seated beside men who've written essays about your figure without having met you. They speak about you in the third person while buttering their bread. At night, you cry quietly. You practice your French in whispers. You recite Je suis Marie, Je suis la Dauphine, Je suis la France maintenant. I am Marie. I am the Dauphine. I am France now. But you don't feel like France. You feel like a girl who stepped into a mirror and disappeared. Zoom out. A girl in a linen pavilion, a name discarded, a language forbidden, a pug left behind. The storm hasn't started yet, but you can smell the iron in the wind. And when you finally sleep, it is the kind of sleep that ends with drums, because tomorrow is your wedding, and tomorrow the real nightmare begins. You wake to bells, not delicate little chimes, but Versailles bells bold, resonant, unapologetic. They clang from towers and chapels and courtyards as if France itself has rolled over and decided it's time you became a wife. You're barely conscious, and already you're being prepared. Not bathed, prepared. 10 women enter your room before your feet hit the floor. You're washed, powdered, corseted, pulled, padded, laced, and pinched into a gown so wide it could sweep the candles off every mantel in the chateau. It rustles like dry leaves in a mausoleum and smells faintly of vinegar and starch. Your stomach is already in knots, but you're offered broth, not for hunger, for nerves. No one says it aloud, but today's goal isn't love, it isn't beauty, it isn't celebration, it's consummation. You're 14, your new husband is 15, and a small nation is invested in whether the two of you can figure out what to do with your bodies once the ceremony ends. Outside, the crowds have already gathered. Some are singing, some are selling bread. Some are just standing in silence, staring at the gilded carriages with faces like stone. Their king is dying. Their wallets are empty. And here you are, a symbol in silk, powdered within an inch of your skull. You're ushered into a golden chapel that could house a small army. The air inside is thick with incense and unspoken judgment. Every pew is filled with lace, jewels, powdered wigs, rouge, and whispered gambling on whether you'll seal the deal before dawn. The wedding is long, Latin chants echo, rings are exchanged, Vows are said. Someone drops a rosary. No one laughs. Louis stands beside you like a wax figure. His hand trembles when it touches yours. His breath smells faintly of mead and mint and something nervous. He doesn't look at you. Not exactly. His eyes stay trained on the altar, or the floor. You do your part. You smile like you were taught gently with the mouth, not the eyes. When the priest pronounces you husband and wife, there's no kiss, no applause, just a slow, rising hum of approval. The sound of court politics shifting slightly in your favour. Afterward comes the meal, a truly monstrous banquet. 16 courses, a dozen wines, plates stacked with swan, venison, sugared oranges, stewed cherries, marzipan shaped like Greek gods. You touch nothing. You're too nauseous to eat. But you must pretend. So you smile again, cut one piece of quail, dab your lips, swallow only air. You catch Louis staring at a plate of sausages like they might save his life. Then dessert, then dancing, then more speeches, toast to your womb, to his virility, to the alliances of 2 ancient houses now braided together like ribbons around a guillotine. And then comes the part everyone is truly waiting for, the bedding ceremony, a royal tradition, obscene in its politeness, devastating in its pressure. You're both led to your new bedroom by a procession of nobles, bishops, and high-ranking busybodies with the emotional subtlety of a firing squad. The room is candlelit, sweltering, and full of eyes. The marriage bed is large, curtained in gold, stuffed with down, and feels more like a stage than a place to sleep. An older nobleman makes a joke something about fruitful soil. A woman tucks your hem, another adjusts Louis's collar. You're both stripped to your underclothes. You lie down first. He follows. Then, mercifully. The curtains are closed, but not before a round of applause. Applause! They clap like they've just watched the first act of a comedy, and then they leave. You're alone now. Louis clears his throat. You hear him fidgeting. There's a small metallic clink. He's removed his shoes. A longer pause. He sits beside you. The mattress sags slightly. Neither of you says anything for a long time. The candles flicker. Your skin feels too tight. You think of Vienna, the cold halls, your dog, the way your mother looked at you like a chess piece. Louis finally speaks. He says, "Do you want more covers?" You nod. He pulls the blanket up to your chin, then rolls onto his back and begins to snore. Just like that. The future King of France falls asleep beside you like a bored peasant in a hayloft. You stare at the ceiling. The next morning, the maids pretend not to notice the unwrinkled sheets, but the whispers begin anyway. And oh, do they whisper. Courtiers who've never so much as spoken to you now discuss your anatomy like they're royal gynecologists. Anonymous pamphlets appear. The libelles, as they're called, flood Paris cruel, pornographic little leaflets mocking your cold womb, your incompetent husband, your foreign softness. Some speculate that Louis prefers hunting to women. Others say you're too frigid, that you're cursed, that you're secretly barren, that Austria sent a defective princess. You're 15 now, still a child, but your failure to produce a child is already being debated in salons and stables alike. You try to learn his interests, locks, keys, knots, metalwork. You listen politely as he explains gears and weight mechanisms. You smile. You ask questions. You try not to wince when he stutters. But nothing changes. The bed remains cold, and the rumours heat up, zoom out. A girl in a gold bed, a boy who snores, a nation holding its breath for a child that won't come. Versailles, by candlelight, begins to laugh softly, venomously, and you, Marie, are starting to realise this palace is not a home, it's a glass box, and everyone is tapping at the sides, waiting for you to break. Versailles smells like expensive rot. Not decay in the graveyard sense, not yet, but in the way perfume tries to fight a war it can never win. Underneath the rosewater and jasmine is the unmistakable stench of people. Too many people. Too many layers. Too many secrets wrapped in velvet and sweat. You walk down the hall of mirrors, and your slippers catch on the marble. The floors are polished, but nothing ever feels clean. The chandeliers drip with wax. The walls echo with whispers. The windows are never quite closed, not because the air is fresh, but because someone somewhere is always trying to escape. Your room is vast, gilded, freezing. The fire doesn't reach the corners. You sleep in a bed so tall it requires a stool. The mattress sags where generations have sweated through brocade. The canopy above you flutters when the wind sneaks in, carrying not the smell of gardens, but of chamber pots and boiled meat. Yes, the pots. Let's talk about those. Versailles, for all its opulence, has no plumbing. That's right. The Palace of the Sun, King Louis XIV's grand masterpiece, is essentially a Baroque porta potty. There are official places to go, but most courtiers don't bother. They relieve themselves in stairwells, in fireplaces, in corners behind tapestries. The servants try their best to keep up, hauling out basins of waste through gilded halls, but the sheer volume of bodily functions overwhelms even the most dedicated chambermaid. Every few days, someone will faint during court. It's not the politics, it's the ammonia. You learn to breathe through your mouth not because it's ladylike, but because you don't want to know what died under the floorboards. But no one talks about it. That's Versailles etiquette. Ignore the stink. Maintain the illusion. You can faint, you can vomit, but you must not wrinkle your nose. Every morning, your day begins with the leave of the royal rising. You do not simply wake up. You are woken. The door creaks open before dawn. A procession enters. Courtiers line up, nobles, duchesses, even bishops, all hoping for the honour of helping you put on a sleeve. They fight over who gets to hand you your garter. It's not about affection. It's about proximity to power. Sometimes they argue while you're half naked. You smile through it. Try not to shiver. Let them bicker over who gets to tie your corset. It takes 19 people to get you dressed, and that's just for breakfast. Louis has a similar ritual. Men fight over who gets to pass him his breeches. One time, he's almost late because the correct duke hadn't arrived to hand him his slippers. There is a designated person for everything, from folding your handkerchief to announcing your bowel movements. No moment is private, no corner unobserved. Even your meals are public. You eat behind a low railing. People come to watch. Peasants, visitors, the minor nobility. They line up and gawk while you chew. If you drop your fork, someone writes about it. The food itself is an event, elaborate, endless, and mostly inedible. Bread baked until black, pâté that wiggles, creams congealed into sculptures, meat drowned in sauces so thick they taste like perfume. The fashion is for display, not digestion. The kitchens, miles away in the palace underbelly, deliver everything cold. You get used to lukewarm veal and melting jellies shaped like roses. One day, someone serves you a swan, actual swan dyed blue with crushed flowers. You try not to cry. The wine is always flowing, not because you're celebrating, but because no one trusts the water. And then there are the fashions. Versailles doesn't just follow trends, it invents punishments and calls them couture. Every week, you're expected to appear in a new gown, stitched from fabric so stiff you can't sit, with sleeves so wide you can't hold anything. The fans are heavy, the gloves too tight, the heels absurd. Your hair rises higher with each passing month, until it resembles a theatrical set piece. At one point, your hairdresser builds you a pouf in the shape of a French frigate, a full ship, complete with sails, flags, and cannon smoke made from cotton. Is meant to honour a naval victory. It gives you a neck spasm. Your hairline begins to recede. You're 17. No one mentions it. They just powder you more. But the real danger isn't the wigs, it's the makeup. To achieve that famous porcelain glow, you're painted with ceruza white lead paste that smooths the skin and poisons the blood. It cracks if you smile too wide. It itches. It burns. But it's what royalty does. You learn not to touch your face. Red dots of rouge are applied high on your cheeks to mimic health. Ironically, it's to hide how sick everyone actually is. You sit at court beside women whose teeth fall out one by one, whose skin peels, whose gums bleed from lead exposure, and you nod politely as they discuss opera. The fashion of Versailles is death in installments. But as long as you sparkle, no one cares. One afternoon, a rat runs across the Queen's salon. No one screams. That would be vulgar. Instead, someone murmurs, "How charmingly rustic." You write home to your mother. You tell her about the ceremonies, the gowns, the courtiers. You leave out the smell, the lead, the rats. Her reply is short. Do your duty. Bear children. Strengthen the alliance. You are a womb with a crown. Meanwhile, the rumours grow louder. The pamphlets grow filthier. You're still not pregnant. Louis still won't touch you. The public begins to suspect scandal. They call you l'Autrichienne, the little Austrian cow. It rhymes. They like that. Your enemies circulate illustrations of you grotesque, lurid caricatures. Some depict you in orgies. Others show you as a pig in a crown. The artistic skill is questionable. The venom is not. You try to ignore it. But every time you enter a room, the conversations halt. You don't know who's read what, who believes what. You only know that the walls feel closer now. Zoom out. A palace where filth hides under satin. A girl painted in poison. A marriage rotting from silence. And outside those gilded gates, France is starving. The bread is thinning. The debts are swelling. And you, poor girl, are being measured for a villain costume you haven't even tried on yet. The first thing you hear each day is the key turning in the lock, not your lock. Of course, queens don't get keys. Queens are unlocked by someone else, on someone else's schedule, because the day must begin, and you are the main event, or at least the main spectacle. At Versailles, your schedule is not yours. It is the court's, and the court is addicted to ritual. Everything must be performed. Everything. Waking up is a procession. Getting dressed is theatre. Blinking might be a minor ceremony if someone important happens to notice. They call it lever the rising. But it doesn't feel like rising. It feels like being hauled into existence, piece by people you barely know. Your chamber door opens, and in comes the first wave a duchess, 2 maids of honour, a valet, and the première femme de chambre who decides what mood you'll be allowed to have today. If she smiles, the sun might as well shine. If she scowls, it's going to be a long morning beneath layers of taffeta and diplomacy. You lie there, eyes open, trying not to startle. One of them announces that it is time. Another pulls back your covers as if revealing a statue. You sit up. You're offered holy water to dab on your forehead, because even waking up must be blessed. Then the others file in. Nobles of varying rank, ladies in waiting, visitors of court, curious cousins, all gathering to watch you sit up. They comment on your posture, on your breath, on your complexion. Someone whispers that your lip is dry. Another offers rose balm. You're not asked, you are attended. You're helped into a robe. Not because you're weak, but because touching the queen is an honour people have killed for. A lady with papery hands buttons the sleeves while another one nods solemnly, as if she's inspecting a religious relic. Then the dressing begins. Your corset is tightened by the bonne femme. The laces cut into your ribs. You cannot wince. Wincing would imply discomfort, and discomfort is not fashionable. Today's dress has been chosen for you. It matches the season, the event, the mood of the ministers, and maybe your husband's passing interest. It requires 2 women to hold it up while a third secures the hooks. Your undergarments have golden thread. The stockings were stitched in laine by women who whispered blessings into every seam. The shoes are velvet and lined with weasel fur. No one asked if you liked weasel. Your hair is styled next. You sit for an hour while your hairdresser builds a powdered cathedral on your scalp. He hums while he works. You close your eyes. Try to breathe through your mouth. The powder smells like wet chalk and lilies. A birdcage wig was suggested for next week, complete with real birds. You're still considering it. Then comes the makeup. Lead white for the face, crushed carmine for the lips and cheeks, a drop of vinegar in your eyes to make them shine. You smile. Your face cracks. You smile again. And now it's breakfast. Breakfast is not breakfast. It's a stage show with food as props. You sit behind a gold railing. Plates are placed before you. A servant whispers what each item is: stewed prunes, chilled cream, poached eggs, a bitter chocolate that's supposed to help with fertility. You are allowed to eat. You are encouraged to eat. But you are also being watched. 30 people stand in the room, some pressed against the walls, others hovering just outside the door. They are not there to dine. They are there to witness you dine, to interpret, to whisper. If you eat too fast, you're crude. Too slowly, you're sad. Skip a dish, and rumours fly. The queen hates fish. The queen suspects poisoning. The queen is ill. Sometimes, you put a fork to your lips and feel like it's a blade. You finish your meal. You thank the appropriate people. You nod to the ones who earned the right to hand you napkins. And then you rise. But only when they do, because even standing up is choreographed. Next comes the day's schedule, already set by someone else. First the promenade. You must be seen in the gardens. The fountains are spraying, the statues are gleaming, peacocks roam like decorative spies. You walk, flanked by women you don't trust, waving to men you've never met. A boy bows too low, his wig falls off. Everyone pretends not to notice. Then, a visit to the king. You're ushered into a room with too many mirrors. Louis XV is old, perfumed, and nearly translucent. He greets you like a grandfather and asks, once again, if there are any heirs on the way. You laugh politely, so does he. But the silence that follows feels like a threat. You return to your apartments, change dresses. This one is lilac. It's for meeting ambassadors. You must sit still for an hour while a diplomat from Sweden explains grain exports. You nod, you smile, you wonder if your eyeliner is smudged. Later, your music tutor arrives. You pluck at the harp. The strings slice your fingers. You bleed into the lace cuffs. The tutor pretends not to see. There is a fitting for a new gown. There is a visit to your children's wing, though. Of course, there are no children yet, but you still visit the empty rooms, as if to will them into existence. Evening falls. Time for the opera. You're escorted in a gold carriage to the Palace Theatre. You sit in a royal box. The crowd below watches you more than the performers. You whisper to Louis. He shrugs. You sigh. A pamphlet tomorrow will say you were bored. Afterward, a ball. Your third pair of shoes today. Your ankles ache. You dance with ministers who smell like wax and pride. At midnight, you're finally allowed to return to your rooms. You're undressed, washed, rubbed with almond oil. The room is cold. Your skin stings. You lie in bed. Louis joins you. He mutters something about clocks. Then he rolls over and falls asleep. You stare at the ceiling again. There's a small crack above your canopy. It looks like a spider, reaching. This is not a day. This is a performance with no intermission. Zoom out. A girl tied into a dress with 20 buttons. A meal eaten like a play. A life dissected, second by second, under candlelight and outside. The people grow hungrier, not just for bread, but for someone to blame. You build yourself a prison made of dairy, not on purpose, not out of malice, but because you're suffocating in velvet, and the only thing you can do is pretend that freedom smells like hay and warm milk. You've tried everything else. You've smiled until your cheeks cracked under lead paint. You've bowed until your knees bruised through layers of silk. You've eaten public breakfasts while strangers analyze the angle of your elbows. You've worn dresses so wide they needed their own diplomatic entourage. And still, they hate you. So now you try something different. You play pretend. If you can't escape Versailles, maybe you can outdream it. They call it the Hameau de la Reine, the Queen's Hamlet, a fake peasant village built on real royal land. It's an absurd idea, and it's also the most sincere thing you've done in years. You design it yourself, with help. Of course, a team of stylists, gardeners, decorators, and one rather flamboyant architect who insists on natural asymmetry. There are thatched roofs, beehives, a mill that works but doesn't grind anything, a dairy where the cows are brushed daily by men in silk shirts, chickens imported from Normandy, hand-sewn peasant dresses that cost more than most merchant homes. You wear linen, you churn butter, you feed goats named after opera characters, you arrange flowers with your daughter, you plant beans. Everything smells of thyme and wet wool, and for the first time in your life, you breathe. No courtiers here, no powdered Snickers, no mirrored walls, just a fake farmhouse with a fake orchard where you can close your eyes and pretend you are ordinary. You're still Queen of France. Of course. That doesn't change. You still have obligations. You still sign documents. But when you're at the Hamlet, those things fade into the treetops. You laugh more. You remember what your real voice sounds like, not the voice used for speeches or prayers or diplomatic apologies, but the one that once sang out windows in Vienna before the language changed. Louis visits sometimes. He doesn't stay long. He prefers keys, maps, and locks. But he smiles when he sees your garden. He even feeds the sheep once. Awkwardly, with both hands. You think maybe I can be a good queen like this. Maybe if I'm softer, smaller, sweeter, they'll stop hating me. Maybe they'll understand I'm not what they say. But they don't. Word leaks out within weeks. It starts with harmless gossip. The queen plays farmer, The queen has a garden, the queen keeps bees, then it mutates. The queen wastes taxpayer gold on false peasantry. She mocks the poor by dressing like them. She bathes in milk while children starve. Your Hamlet becomes the perfect metaphor even though it's wrong. Even though you built it to cope, not to flaunt. Even though you cry sometimes when you're alone among the sheep. They don't care. They never did. You are Marie Antoinette, and the world has already written your script. They start calling you l'Autrichienne, again the Austrian woman, but twisted to sound like La Chienne the bitch. Pamphlets flood the city, Libelle's little printed nightmares, some erotic, some violent, all vicious. In them, you are everything lustful, lazy, barren, manipulative. You sleep with everyone. You sleep with no one. You ruin France with your foreign tongue and your silk shoes. One pamphlet shows you nude, nursing pigs. Another says you plotted to poison the king's wine. A third accuses you of sleeping with your brother-in-law and your female chambermaid in the same bed. You think of your Hamlet, of your soft sheep, of the way sunlight filters through ivy leaves on a quiet afternoon, and you feel something inside you wither. You can't fight paper. You try to explain. You issue statements. You host orphans. You sew blankets for the poor. You reduce your dress orders. You even appear in public without jewellery. It doesn't help, because in their minds you still live in a gold palace made of cream, and they live in dust. Then comes the rat. One night, you return to your apartments from a meeting with the finance minister. You're tired. Your corset has bruised your ribs. Your feet throb. You want nothing but sleep. But your door is different. Hanging from it, nailed through the skull, is a dead rat. Its body rigid, its tail curled into a perfect question mark, written in red ink on the wood l'Autrichienne. You do not scream. You do not cry. You stare. And for the first time in years, you feel completely seen. Versailles becomes quieter after that. Not in sound. There's still music, footsteps, gossip. But something changes. A silence behind the noise. A cooling. People look at you sideways. Ministers pause when they pass you. Your friends speak more carefully. Even your hairdresser grows formal. It's not that they think you're guilty. It's that they think you're doomed. And they don't want to go down with you. You spend more time at the Hamlet, but now it feels like a lie. The fences are too clean. The chickens too obedient. Even the cows look suspicious. You stop wearing the linen. You stop churning butter. You stare at the thatch roofs and realize they're just that, roofs. Nothing below. No home. One day, your daughter asks if the milkmaids live here all the time. You say yes. She smiles. You don't correct yourself. Meanwhile, France tightens, the people clench. Bread prices soar, the harvests rot. Winter gnaws at the bones of the city. Children sleep in chimneys for warmth, and in every square, your face stares down from a pamphlet, grinning falsely, eyes painted with contempt. The queen with her fake farm, the queen with her perfume, the queen who eats cake. You never said it, not even once, but the phrase spreads like plague. Let them eat cake. Let her eat steel. You write fewer letters. Your mother is dead. Your brother is distant. Your allies are scattered. You look around and realize you have almost no one. The people who truly knew you are gone. What's left are costumes, performances, smiles stitched with fear. Your closest friend, the Princesse de Lamballe, has become your shadow sweet, loyal, always near. She stays up with you when you can't sleep. She holds your hand when your fingers shake. She calls you Marie, not Majesty. But even she cannot protect you, not from what's coming. Zoom out, a fake village crumbling under real hatred, a woman who wanted to disappear, now visible on every wall, a queen who tried to pretend her way to peace and found herself painted into war. The Hamlet still stands, but the dream has rotted, and the people are waking up. Your smiles start to ache, not just from politeness or powder, but from how often you have to fake being alive. Your eyes go dull at dinners. You blink too slowly during receptions. You sit through councils with your hands folded, your back straight, your mind somewhere far beyond the hall of mirrors, somewhere quieter, somewhere where no one measures your existence in wombs, wigs, or wine goblets. You've become a ghost with a pulse, and Versailles has become colder. Not in temperature, though the corridors remain breathless and damp, but in energy. In tone, the warmth is gone, the flirtation, the music. It used to be a glittering hive of gossip and powdered seduction. Now it buzzes with unease. Everyone is watching everyone else and no one is laughing. Not sincerely. Anyway, the nobles still attend. They still bow, but their bows are shorter now, their eyes sharper. You can feel the distance stretching between you and them like a silk thread pulled too tight. One by one, the court begins to drift. They smell smoke in the wind, and they do what courtiers do best: abandon the building before the fire arrives. You try to keep some rhythm. Morning lever, public breakfast, the Hamlet, sometimes. Though you now feel more like a hostess at a funeral there than a milkmaid. You try music again. The harp no longer sings. Your letters are fewer. The Empress is gone. Joseph, your brother, writes occasionally curt, unsentimental, always reminding you that the dynasty needs you to endure. But even that word endure feels like a punishment now. You aren't enduring. You're just waiting. And then they come for her. The one person left who feels real. The last thread connecting you to something that doesn't have an audience. Princess de Lamballe. She's not your blood, but she may as well be. You trust her. You need her. She was there through the early humiliations, the silent marriage bed, the snickering pamphlets, the empty nursery. She held your shaking hands through miscarriages. She read to you when your head ached from too many pins and too few kind words. She slept beside your bed the night Louis's cough wouldn't stop. She kept the candles lit when your son had a fever that made him forget his name. She knew when you needed silence and when you needed a poem. You loved her. Quietly, completely. But that's dangerous now. To be close to you is to invite death. The radicals in Paris see her as your whispering accomplice. They say she hides letters, that she poisons ministers, that she's the snake in your bosom. None of it is true, but truth no longer matters, not to them. One morning, you're summoned. The king looks pale. His hands tremble. He tells you she's being exiled. You feel it before he says it. Not a polite suggestion, not a gentle request to travel, a removal. She's to be escorted from Versailles immediately, by guards, in public. You stand so quickly your chair topples. No, you say. It's not a command. It's a plea. But it changes nothing. You run to her apartments. She's already being packed. Her hands are shaking, but her face is calm the way people are when they're afraid they'll scream if they move. She says, "It's all right. It's temporary." You both know that's a lie. You hug her. She squeezes your fingers, once a code you both invented years ago for "I'm still here." You don't cry. Not until she's gone. When the door closes behind her, something inside you caves in like a rotting beam in a flooded house. That night, you're not undressed. You sit in your gown, corset still tight, hair still high. You stare at your reflection in the dark window until your nose disappears into the black. All you see are your eyes, floating in glass. You think I am alone. Not metaphorically, not poetically, not diplomatically. Actually, you are Queen of France, mother of a prince, wife of a king, the centre of an empire's gaze, and you are utterly unheld. The palace changes after Lamballe leaves. More guards, fewer smiles. The servants walk faster. Ministers stop speaking when you enter rooms. Messages are shorter. Eyes shift. You hear words in the corridors. The Bastille. The pamphlets are everywhere. Something is happening in Paris. Louis shrugs. He says not to worry. He says these things pass. He still believes in the weight of his title, like a shield forged from divine right. But titles don't matter when the streets are full of hunger, and Paris is beginning to gnaw at its leash. At court, the masks begin to fall. You start to notice who avoids your gaze, who hesitates when called, who's always in the room when rumours leak. Even your own ladies in waiting speak more carefully now, like they're auditioning for some role that hasn't been written yet. At night, you dream of Lamballe, of the Hamlet, of milk that never soured and sunlight that never dimmed, of a day when your name meant girl, not monster. You wake with blood in your mouth from grinding your teeth. The doctor says it's stress. You say nothing. One morning, you find a letter slipped beneath your chamber door. It's unsigned, sloppy, smudged with wax. It says she won't be the last. You should be next. You burn it. But the ash still smells like threat. Zoom out. A queen sitting still in a gilded chair, a friend removed like a bandage, a palace that grows colder every hour. Outside, the Bastille still stands, but not for long, and inside, the Queen of France counts her allies on fewer and fewer fingers. They study your body like it's a broken machine. They whisper about your hips, your breath, your appetite, your posture, every fidget, every sigh. Every skipped dance step is dissected by ministers and midwives alike. If you laugh too lightly, you're hiding something. If you cry, you're hysterical. If you do neither, you must be barren. You've been Queen of France for years now, and you still haven't given them an heir? At Versailles, that's a threat to national security. They don't say it aloud, not at first, but it spreads through the palace like mould in the panelling. At dinners, nobles glance at your stomach with hopeful eyes. At court, old women nod and smile as if sheer optimism might impregnate you. Every letter from your mother is a different variation of the same theme: be more agreeable. Fulfill your duty. Do not embarrass Austria. As if your womb were a diplomatic envoy. As if your body were holding Europe together by a single, uncooperative ovary. The truth is simpler and much more humiliating. Louis won't touch you. Not in anger. Not in rejection. Just not at all. He lies beside you every night, heavy breathing and clock-obsessed. Sometimes he sighs, sometimes he mumbles about hinges or harvests, but he never reaches for you, never even brushes against your skin unless it's accidental. You've tried. God, you've tried. You've worn the lace, you've whispered the poetry, you've lit the candles, you've read entire novels on seduction and practiced in your mirror until your lips hurt from smiling. Still nothing. Some nights, he falls asleep before you've even finished praying. You begin to wonder if it's you, if there's something rotted or repellent inside you, something only a husband can detect. And of course, the court agrees, because the king cannot be wrong, not in public, not in bed. So the whispers settle on you like dust on a forgotten piano. The queen is too cold, too Austrian, too unfeeling, too ambitious, too soft, too hard, too educated, too ignorant. You begin to hate your own reflection. The physicians are called in. They do what physicians in Versailles do best: they speculate in Latin, nod solemnly, and then suggest more horseback riding. One suggests leeches, another recommends music. A third implies that perhaps, if you were more grateful, your uterus would respond better. You want to scream. Instead, you compose a letter to your brother Joseph, not as queen to emperor, but as sister to brother. You write what you can't say aloud that your husband doesn't know how, and you're too proud, too terrified, too watched to explain it to him. Joseph responds within weeks, and then he comes. His arrival is not announced with fanfare. He doesn't want the court involved. Just a quiet, familial visit from a Habsburg emperor, nothing political, nothing suspicious, except everything at Versailles is political, and everything is suspicious. Still, you're grateful. Joseph speaks with Louis, behind closed doors, for hours. No one knows what's said, but afterward, something changes. That night, Louis doesn't go straight to sleep. He doesn't talk about locks, doesn't shuffle nervously under the covers. He sits on the edge of the bed for a moment. He breathes deeply. Then, awkwardly, he reaches for your hand. You feel something shift like a rusted door finally unlatching. He says, "I think I understand now," and he touches you, carefully, gently, as if afraid you might vanish. You don't. You stay. You let him come closer, and for the first time in years, you are not alone. Weeks pass. You feel different. You're tired. Not court tired, not social tired, body tired. Your stomach flutters. Your appetite turns strange. You burst into tears while watching a bird drink from a fountain. You suspect. You hope. You pray. Then one morning, as you stand in the Queen's garden sipping chocolate, you feel a violent lurch in your stomach and vomit into a rose bush. 3 ladies faint from excitement. You are pregnant. The palace explodes with joy. The court throws spontaneous balls. Church bells ring across the countryside. Nobles kneel and kiss your hands. Servants sob. Ministers breathe easier. Your mother writes to say, "Finally." Even Louis glows stiffly, proudly, like a man who's just fixed a leaking clock. You're no longer barren. You are holy. Pregnancy is awful. Your feet swell until your shoes don't fit. Your lower back screams. Your ribs ache from corset pressure and hormonal rage. You cry over soup. You eat raw carrots in bed at 2 a. You stop sleeping. They change your wardrobe, loosen your gowns, send daily reports to Austria about your appetite, your bowel movements, your mood. You're not a woman anymore. You're a symbol. At court, people touch your stomach without asking. They speak to it, bow to it. One man writes a poem addressed to your womb. You smile. You wave. Inside. You want to hide beneath the floorboards. When the baby comes, the entire court is there to witness it. Literally. You are in labour for hours, screaming into lace pillows, while men in powdered wigs sip wine and wait for the crown to emerge. Privacy is treason. At the final moment, someone pulls back the curtain so the royal midwife can lift the child into view and confirm its legitimacy. A girl, Marie Therese, small, pink, alive. You cry. Louis smiles. The court softens. Briefly. They wanted a boy. They do not say this aloud, but it's written on their faces like frost. Still, France has a child. You have a daughter. And for a moment, the palace feels warm. But they are not satisfied. Not yet. The pressure resumes almost immediately. You must try again. We need a dauphin. One more, Your Majesty. You nod. You obey. You prepare yourself for another cycle of speculation. Nausea. Pressure. Exhaustion. This time, a boy. Louis Joseph. Your son. France rejoices. Bells, fireworks, toasts, opera performances. You, once insulted, now enshrined. You have fulfilled your role. But you haven't forgotten the years they laughed behind fans. You haven't forgotten the pamphlets, the rumours, the priests who whispered that you were God's punishment in a powdered wig. You remember the shame, the confusion, the bitterness of blame. And now they love you, but only because you produce something they can love more. You hold your son. He wriggles in your arms as he sneezes. You kiss his forehead and think you're everything they wanted from me. But they don't know me. They never will. Zoom out. A woman who spent years being shamed for silence. A queen who became acceptable only after producing heirs. A body turned into a battlefield, now praised only for what it created, not for what it endured. You have children now, but the people, they are still hungry. And their patience is running out. You retreat, again, to the only place that's ever felt like yours. The hamlet, your carefully constructed dream. Stone cottages arranged like theatre props. Artificial streams redirecting royal plumbing. Beehives that are cleaned daily by gloved men with titles. Sheep who wear little bells, who don't smell like sheep. You return with your children. You wear linen. You bake bread with manicured hands. You churn butter while a tutor waits in the background to resume Latin lessons. You hold your daughter's tiny hand and point out the strawberry patch. The clouds. The chickens who do not lay eggs unless a servant bribes them with sugared oats. You are playing peasant again, but this time the stakes are different, because outside the gilded gates, France is starving for real. At court, the bread is still warm, the silver is still polished, the dances still continue, a little more stiffly, a little more cautiously. But the masks are cracking. You hear it in the way servants whisper in corners. You feel it in the tension of court musicians tuning their instruments fast, anxious, as if music can outrun revolution. Even Louis has started reading newspapers. That's how bad things are. The people are angry, not just hungry, not just tired, angry. They gather in taverns. They pass around pamphlets. The labels are getting sharper now, less salacious, more political. You're no longer just a nymphomaniac foreigner. You are now Madame Deficit. They say you're draining the economy, that every thread in your gown could feed a family for a month, that your perfumed baths are warmer than their homes, and your Hamlet, oh, your poor, stupid Hamlet has become a symbol. They imagine you in a white apron laughing while they die. They think it's mockery. They think you're pretending to suffer. They think you're laughing at them. You try to explain. You sponsor charities. Reduce your wardrobe. Order simpler meals. You start refusing the more extravagant wigs, wearing more modest gowns, appearing in public with your children like some kind of powdered Madonna. But it's too late. They don't care what you wear anymore. They only care what you represent, and what you represent is indifference in silk. Even your milkmaid costume becomes dangerous. One afternoon, you're walking with Marie Therese, showing her how to check the tomatoes for beetles, when a courier arrives at a gallop, face pale, hands trembling. "There's been a riot in Paris," he says. "They're shouting your name." Louis tells you to stay at Versailles. He insists it will pass. He insists everything always passes. You know better. The Bastille falls. They say it crumbled like stale bread. In truth, it was stormed by thousands, a swarm of desperation and fury. The prison gates torn from their hinges, guards murdered, heads paraded on pikes, keys raised like trophies. The key to the Bastille is sent to America, a gift to George Washington, a symbol of liberty. Meanwhile, in France, liberty is bleeding in the streets. You wake to find the palace surrounded. Women, thousands of them, wet from the rain, faces hard, shoes caked in mud. They've walked from Paris in clogs and barefoot, some of them pregnant, some of them carrying spoons as weapons. Their voices like iron. Bread. They shout, bread, bread. They demand to see the king, then they demand to see you. You are the one they blame. Louis hesitates. He consults ministers. He writes letters. He wrings his hands. You take action. You walk to the balcony, alone, below you mud, hunger, steel. You're wearing a plain white gown, no jewels, no crown, just your face, pale and too known. They stare. Someone lifts a musket, points it, pauses. You stare back, then you curtsy. Not to mock, not to condescend, to survive. The musket lowers, and the crowd cheers. It's not joy, it's not forgiveness. It's a release of tension. The Queen bowed. For now, that's enough. But the next demand comes quickly. Come to Paris. They want you there. Visible. Trapped. Louis agrees. He has no choice. You and your family are packed into carriages. Behind you, a long procession of carts, guards, and mocking drums. Some march with loaves of bread impaled on bayonets. Others with signs, "No more cake." You do not cry. You hold your daughter in one arm and your son in the other, and you ride through the rain-soaked roads. Face still, hands shaking under your gloves. You leave behind Versailles, your prison of mirrors, your make-believe village, your entire identity, and you arrive in Paris as prisoners of the people. You're housed in the Tuileries Palace, a once grand building that smells of dust and bad memory. The furniture is old, the hallways echo. Guards are posted at every door. You're not beaten, not yet, but you're no longer free. Your children ask questions you can't answer. They ask if the hamlet is still there. You lie and say yes. You say the sheep miss them. You say there will be strawberries again next spring. You say the Queen will go home soon. Zoom out. A mother bowing on a balcony. A fake peasant dragged into real poverty. A queen with no stage left, only audience. Paris is no longer curious. Paris is hungry. And hunger is a kind of religion. One that does not forgive. You become a bedtime story for people who don't sleep. In every tavern, in every tenement, your name is passed around like a dirty coin. Not whispered anymore, sneered, shouted, spat. You're no longer a woman. You're an idea. A symbol of everything France hates about itself. The pamphlets flood the streets. Not a few. Not dozens, hundreds. They fly from print shops like locusts, pinned to doors, shoved into pockets, read aloud in bread lines. They're illustrated. Two grotesque little masterpieces of hate and ink. And they are obsessed with you, not the real you. That would be too dull. No, they invent a woman. She wears rubies while children die. She dances naked with her brother-in-law. She drinks blood in secret rituals. She laughs during executions. She eats diamonds for dessert. Sometimes she's a harlot, sometimes a sorceress, sometimes both, depending on the paper. One shows you bathing in milk while farmers drink mud. Another shows you in bed with 6 guards, 1 court musician, and a cardinal. Some have you selling French secrets to Austria. Others say you're poisoning the king, or the dauphin, or the bread. The most popular, the one where you're posed like a goddess, surrounded by priests in chains and children begging for bread with the caption Mère de Vice, Mother of Vice. They hand it out like candy. The illustrations are detailed, too detailed. You try to ignore them. You've learned to live with mockery. Versailles was built on gossip, but this is different. This is personal. This is violent. Louis says to stay calm, that these are only words, that the people are venting steam. You smile at him like a doll and think steam is harmless until it finds a kettle with a crack, and France is cracking. You keep up appearances. You take your children on walks in the palace garden, even though there are no flowers, only guards. You smile through dinners where food arrives cold and is carried out uneaten. Your son, Louis Joseph, begins coughing, a small thing at first, then not so small. His skin turns pale, his energy fades, his chest heaves at night like it's trying to crawl away from him. The doctors say it's tuberculosis. You say no. You sit beside his bed for hours, wiping sweat from his forehead with linen handkerchiefs stitched with imperial crests. You sing to him, the same lullaby your nurse sang to you. He stops singing back. He dies, quietly, in the night. You're not told immediately. A guard hears your scream through the door. The papers celebrate. They print jokes about the Dauphin coughing up privilege. They draw you in mourning clothes with a wine glass instead of a tear. They call it justice. They say one less bourbon is one less burden. You stop leaving your room. You stop eating. You sleep in his bed for a week. The revolution does not pause. Soon. Your rooms are searched. Not politely. Not ceremonially. Your drawers are flung open. Your letters rifled. Your underthings held up like evidence. They're looking for signs of treason, or secrets, or Austrian plots. They find drawings, a child's toy, a rosary. They confiscate it all anyway. And then they come for your closest friends. Your hairdresser is arrested. They say he's hiding code in the powder tins. Your seamstress disappears. They say she was sewing sedition into your corsets. Even the cook, the old man who makes you weak broth and only speaks in verbs, is dragged away. You say nothing. You've learned that words mean nothing now. You only have gestures. So you start burning things. Letters, sketches, dresses too fine for prison. Your husband doesn't understand, but you do. You're clearing space for what's coming. Because Versailles is not just gone, it's cursed. The memory of it is poison in the public's mouth. Every column is a tax, every chandelier a lie. Every dinner you ever ate is now a crime scene in someone's imagination. You, Marie Antoinette, are the most extravagant ghost in all of France. One day, a new pamphlet arrives, folded under your breakfast tray. You don't open it. You already know. Later, a guard tells you the title anyway, Marie the Monster, A Mother's Sin. It says you slept with your son. That's why he died. It says, that's why you deserve to. Even your enemies flinch. For a moment, then they print more. You stop reading altogether. You stop speaking unless necessary. Your face becomes still not royal stillness, but pre-execution stillness. You watch your daughter play with a rag doll and think I am disappearing in front of her eyes. Zoom out. A woman turned into filth by ink and fear. A mother who lost a child and became more hated for it. A queen reduced to a metaphor, then to a cartoon, then to nothing. There are no mirrors in your room anymore. You requested they be removed. But it doesn't matter. Everyone in France has one, and they're all holding it up to you. You plan your escape like a child building a raft from furniture in a flooding house. Clumsy, urgent, doomed. Louis is the last to admit that it's time. Even now, locked inside the Tuileries Palace, with guards stationed at every door and hunger rising in the streets like floodwater, he still clings to the fantasy that the monarchy can survive this if he just explains himself well enough. You know better, because no one is listening anymore. They're watching. It starts with a letter to Fersen Count Axel von Fersen, the Swedish noble who's been circling your orbit for years. Perhaps too close, perhaps not close enough. He's the one who still believes you're worth saving. He writes back within weeks. Short sentences, no sentiment, just logistics. He has carriages. He has routes. He has men. You have children, a husband who panics in tight spaces, and a face printed in every tavern in France. So you make a plan. It will happen in June, midnight, quietly. You and Louis will disguise yourselves not as beggars, but as bourgeois travellers. Your children will be dressed as girls of the merchant class. Your most loyal attendants will pose as servants. Fersen will lead you out the side entrance of the palace and into a waiting coach, and from there you'll flee to Montmedy, a garrison near the Austrian border. still loyal to the crown. If you reach Montmedy, you can regroup, reclaim your authority, call for foreign aid, repress the rebellion. If you don't reach it, you don't think about that part. You sew money into the hems of your corsets. You pack nothing that crinkles. You memorize your false name Baron de Corfe. You whisper it to yourself at night like a prayer. Your daughter is told they're going on an adventure. She smiles. Your son is too young to smile at all. You write a letter to your brother. You burn the first draft. The second you seal with wax, even though it trembles in your hands. Louis writes instructions, not to his children, to his advisors. Even now, he's planning how to govern after the escape. He talks about tax policy in the carriage. You nod. You press his hand. You don't mention that none of this will matter if you're recognized on the road. You tell yourself this is survival, but it still feels like surrender. The night comes. The palace is asleep, or pretending to be. Your disguise is absurd: a grey wig, a bonnet too tight at the chin, gloves a size too small. You wear your oldest gown, the one with the torn hem that used to trail through the hamlet. Louis wears a brown coat and a tricorn hat, as if dressing down could erase the exact shape of his nose, printed on every assignat, every coin, every shopkeeper's memory. The children are bundled, the guards are bribed. Fersen stands at the ready, the coach is late. Your heartbeat is not. When it finally arrives, it's not discreet. It's a massive Berlin lavish, slow, royal, Louis insisted. He refused to cram his family into something undignified. You climb in anyway. The wheels begin to turn. The streets of Paris blur past the window, black as ink and twice as thick. You don't breathe. You don't blink. You count the cracks in the cobblestones and whisper your name, Baron de Corfe, over and over. The first night, you sleep in the coach, your daughter's head heavy in your lap. The second night, you stop briefly in Saint-Menehould, a tavern. Quiet. Too quiet. Louis insists on stretching his legs. He's recognized by the local postmaster Jean-Baptiste Drouet, a man who once held a coin in his hand and committed the king's profile to memory like a hymn. The man leaves quietly. You don't notice. You should have. The next morning, you stop in Varennes. It's supposed to be brief, a horse change, but the streets are already filling. Something is wrong, with the air too dense, too silent. The horses aren't ready. The coachman stammers. You hear shouting. You peek from the carriage and see torches. Louis fumbles for his papers. He says he's a merchant. No one believes him. You watch as armed men surround the coach. Faces you don't recognize. Voices rising. Then a guard lifts a lantern and says, "Welcome home, Your Majesty." The return to Paris is slow, not because of the roads, because of the parade. You are the lead float in a funeral procession, not for yourself, but for monarchy. People line the streets not to welcome you, but to verify that you have been caught. They cheer, sometimes, mostly they stare. Sometimes they throw things. A dead cat, a loaf of mouldy bread, a coin, aimed at your eye. Louis says nothing. You hold your daughter's hand and count the bruises blooming on your ribs. Back at the palace, you are not met with ceremony. You are met with papers. Louis is stripped of his title. You are called not Queen, not Madame, not even Antoinette, but Widow Capet, the title they will later use on the execution block, even though your husband is still breathing. You are prisoners now, officially. Your rooms are reduced, your servants cut in half, your movements restricted, the children are watched. You're searched daily, sometimes by men. You say nothing, because now, everything is a trap. Even kindness. Especially kindness. Louis grows quieter. He tries to build a box for your son's toys and cries when he snaps the hinge. He keeps fiddling with locks, a child's toy chest, a gate, a drawer, anything he can fix. You begin to worry about his mind, but you can't say so. You're too busy planning again. You dream of Montmedy, of Austria, of snow, of warmth. You wake to mould in the corners. You write letters in lemon juice. They are intercepted. You try bribery. The coins go missing. You try silence. It only makes you more suspicious. You are trapped, and you know it, but you don't stop trying. Because what else can a caged woman do but pace her dreams into the floor? Zoom out, a queen in borrowed clothes, captured by a child's memory, a king who believes politeness will save him, a family turned into fugitives, and then into furniture, They returned you to Paris, but they will not let you leave it again. It begins with drums, not the festive kind, not even the military kind. These are execution drums, low and heavy, like thunder with a heartbeat. You wake to their rhythm, though you've heard them in your dreams for weeks now. Paris has been practicing this moment, not just the men who built the guillotine, not just the guards who march in sequence, but the people. The city knows how to kill a king now. They come for Louis at dawn. Your room is too far to see it happen, but not too far to feel it. The walls shake slightly when they unlock his door. You hear his voice calm, maybe even relieved. You hear your son cry out once, as Louis kisses him goodbye. The guards hush him too roughly. Your daughter stirs in her sleep. You pretend not to be awake. There's nothing else you can do. The cell doors close behind them. Then the corridor is quiet. You sit for hours in your chair, hands folded, lips bloodless. You try to imagine him standing in front of the people, that stiff Bourbon posture, that slightly puzzled face he wears when he's nervous. You wonder if he'll give a speech, if they'll let him speak at all, if they'll cheer or jeer or simply watch, blank-eyed, as the man who once ruled France becomes a head on a cart. At 11 o'clock, the silence breaks, not with an announcement, not with a gunshot, but with cheering. A strange, joyous roar, rising up from somewhere past the prison walls, travelling like smoke through the alleys and avenues of Paris. You do not cry. You listen to the cheering, to your daughter's quiet breathing, to the absence that now hums inside your bones. They do not return his body. They say it was too crowded. They say there were complications. They say nothing at all. You press your hand to the wall and think of him as he was in the garden with mud on his shoes, coaxing the Dauphin to laugh, awkwardly holding a frog like it might explode in his hand. Louis, the man who would rather fix a lock than open a door. Louis, your husband, your burden, your mirror, gone. The next day, they remove the royal portraits from your cell, quietly. A guard with ink-stained fingers pulls them from the wall and mutters, "Doesn't suit the decor anymore." You say nothing. You just watch the nail holes remain. A week later, they take your son, not for punishment, for re-education. He is 6 years old. They separate him in the middle of the night. He screams, loud enough to wake the entire prison. You try to run after him, barefoot in the corridor, your voice cracking je t'aime, but a guard blocks your path. Too late, he says. You don't see the boy again. Not as a child. Not as your child. They keep him in a dark room surrounded by rats, beatings, and bribes. They say he confessed. They say he wrote that you touched him. They say a lot of things. None of them require proof. The world is narrowing. Your room is smaller. Your dress is simpler. Your skin itches from damp air and rough soap. You begin to talk to yourself, at first in whispers, then aloud. You sing lullabies into the wall. You write letters in your mind, to your mother, to your children, to yourself. None of them are answered. Your body begins to change. Your hair turns white. Your gums bleed. You lose the feeling in your right hand from cold. You count your ribs when you lie down. You begin to believe there are mice in the walls who whisper your name. But still, you do not scream. Outside, Paris is boiling. The reign of terror is in full bloom. Executions become a daily theatre. The guillotine becomes the national clock ticking, ticking, ticking every few hours. Even those who built the revolution begin to fear its rhythm. People vanish mid-sentence. One day, your friend the Princesse de Lamballe is brought to the prison. She doesn't last long. They beat her in the street, with fists, with boards, with hate. They strip her. They defile her. They carry her head on a pike beneath your window and shout, "Come look, Madame." You don't look. You know what they've done. But the scream lives inside your lungs for days before it finds a way out in a single shudder in the dead of night, when even the guards are too afraid to mock you. Zoom out. A woman with no husband, no son, no country, no future. The Queen of France now sleeps on straw. And still, the people say it's too soft. It begins before dawn. You wake to the sound of boots on stone, echoing through the narrow corridor like a metronome for death. The guards don't knock anymore. They don't bow, don't announce, don't pretend you're still what you were. They open the door and wait. One of them clears his throat, not because he's nervous, but because he has something stuck in his teeth. You watch him press a thumb against his molar as you sit up slowly from your straw mattress. You're not surprised. You knew today was the day. The priest had started praying louder outside your cell the day before. The washerwoman had refused to meet your eyes when she delivered your linen shift. And last night, they took your mirror away what little piece of polished tin they let you keep, as if your own face might startle you on the way out. It wouldn't. You haven't seen her the woman you used to be in months. The guards tell you you'll be executed within the hour. Not in a whisper, not gently. Just a casual update. Like you've missed your slot at the hairdresser. They offer you a priest. You decline. Not because you lack faith, but because there's nothing left to confess. Nothing they haven't already accused you of. Nothing the papers haven't printed in ink and bile. You've been condemned for sins you never had the creativity to commit. Besides, you've spent your whole life performing holiness for people who hated you anyway. You ask for a comb instead. They bring in the prison barber. He is short, grey, sallow-skinned. His hands shake as he approaches you. He smells like old wool and rusted metal. He doesn't speak, not at first. He unwraps his tools with the silence of a butcher. Then he reaches for your hair. You flinch, reflexively. It's not the blade that frightens you, it's the intimacy. You haven't been touched kindly in so long that even this dull professional gesture feels unbearable. Your hair is chopped close to the nape. Each snip echoes like a whisper in a confession box. You sit still, breathing through your nose. When he nicks your scalp, you apologize. Not because it hurt, because you've learned apologizing is safer than speaking. They dress you in a plain chemise grey, rough, threadbare, the same shade as the walls of your cell. Your hands are tied behind your back, loosely at first, then tighter as the ropes are cinched by a man with ink-stained fingers who doesn't look at your face. You're escorted out. You do not weep. Not because you're brave, you aren't, but because your tears were spent long ago on people who never came back. The hallway's darker than you remember. Your shoes scuff against the stone. Every step feels rehearsed. The guards don't rush you. There's no need. The scaffold isn't going anywhere. As you step outside, the sunlight blinds you. You squint. The sky is sharp and pale, as if the clouds have all been scraped clean from it. Paris is waiting. Not just the guillotine, not just the square, but all of it. The city has gathered to watch your final scene. The tumbril is waiting. It's a wooden cart, splintered and damp. Flies swarm near the rear wheels. You step into it carefully, your bound hands straining behind you for balance. No one helps. You don't expect them to. You sit on a bench, and the cart begins to roll. The wheels squeal. One of them clicks irregularly, a flat spot in the wood. Maybe. It ticks like a clock counting down seconds. You do not ask how far it is to the scaffold. You already know. Paris lines the streets like an open wound. Men, women, children, thousands of them. The old ones squint. The young ones throw things. Bread crusts, orange peels, a pebble. You feel it strike your knee and ignore it. Some cheer, others stare. A few cross themselves quietly. You notice one girl, maybe 10 years old, holding her father's hand. She asks something you can't hear. He leans down, whispers into her ear, then points at you. She nods, watches. You look away. As you near the Place de la Révolution, you see it. The scaffold. Tall, stark, brutal. No curtains, no platform for speeches. Just steps, a plank, a blade, and a basket. Resting casually beside it like an open purse waiting for fruit. The guillotine is red at the base. You wonder whose it was yesterday. The cart stops. You wait to be unbound. A guard climbs in. He is young, nervous. His breath smells like apples. He loosens the rope at your wrists, then fumbles with the last knot. You shift slightly, your heel brushing against his boot. He grunts. You look down, meet his eyes, and say softly, "Pardon me, monsieur. I did not do it on purpose." Those are your last words. No poetry, no sermons, no defiance, just an apology. Because that's what they've trained you to say. Because a queen dies the way she lived controlled. They pull you toward the steps. You walk without resisting. Your legs feel detached from your body like they belong to someone else. A woman in a costume, a character from a book, Marie Antoinette, foreign tyrant, Madame Deficit, l'Autrichienne, not you. You reach the plank, they tie your arms again, tighter now. They force you to kneel. Your chin presses into the wood. It smells of sweat and pine. Above you, the blade waits. It doesn't glint. It doesn't gleam. It simply exists like a fact. You close your eyes. You do not pray. There is nothing left to save. The blade falls. They hold up your head. The crowd cheers. The executioner lifts it high, blood still steaming in the morning air. For a moment, all of Paris roars. And then, as quickly as it came, the sound dies. Because the queen is dead. And somehow, everything still feels broken. They bury your body in an unmarked grave. No stone, no name, just earth, soaked in your final warmth. You, who once wore ships in your hair, who drank from crystal, who were painted in silks and described in poems now turned to bone and soil. The girl who left Vienna at 14, stripped naked on the border, powdered, crowned, cheered, cursed, and finally silenced. Marie Antoinette. Nothing more than a whisper in the basket. Zoom out. A throne with no seat. A crown with no weight. A name carved into history and misspelled ever since. And the people, they cheer for your death, but they keep starving. You are dead, and yet the world refuses to let you go. Not your body, which lies anonymously buried in a pit of quicklime and shame, but your name, which now spreads faster than bread riots, faster than revolution, faster than your executioner could ever imagine. It travels by candlelight, by rumour, by print shop ink still wet, from the streets of Paris to the coffee houses of London, to the halls of Vienna where your mother once ruled and your ghost now paces the tapestries. You are no longer a woman. You are a mirror, tilted toward whichever monster or martyr someone needs, and the glass never answers back. Your corpse, meanwhile, lies rotting in the Madeleine Cemetery, an open trench, dug with haste and filled with haste. They do not mark your place. They do not line it with stone. Louis is already there, somewhere below you, his once powdered scalp now glistening bone. They buried him in the same way like rotted meat. A hole, a shovel, a sentence fulfilled. Rain falls, worms rise, no monument, no last rites, only dirt and forgetting, or so they think. But the dead do not vanish. Not when they were queens. Not when they were hated this much. Hate, after all, is one of the most efficient preservatives in history. And so you live on, in pamphlets first, then speeches, then theatre. 1 week after your death, they stage a puppet show on the Rue Saint-Honoré, Madame Deficit's final supper, featuring a papier-mâché head that rolls off the stage and into the audience with satisfying, giggly thuds. Children scream with laughter. They do not know that a real woman once wore that powdered wig. Next come the memoirs. Not yours. You were never granted the time but those of your enemies, your chambermaids, your butchers. Every person who ever passed you in a corridor now remembers a glint in your eye, a cruel remark, a jewel you dropped on purpose just to watch a servant crawl. They describe you with lurid detail. You bathed in milk, you danced with Satan, you forced starving peasants to powder your feet. Some say you never spoke French fluently. Others say your accent was too perfect, as if you were spying all along. Every contradiction becomes a fact. Every rumour becomes doctrine. Then the gossip grows stranger. A postmaster claims your spirit knocked over his inkpot. A laundress says you visited her in a dream and demanded your lost chemise be returned. A priest swears your ghost confessed her innocence and that your soul left the cell through the mirror. That last one sticks. Suddenly the mirror in your final prison cell is said to be cursed. People pay coins to touch it. One revolutionary kisses it and breaks out in hives. They close the cell and board the mirror up. It's still there, waiting. Your daughter does not speak. Not at first. She is kept under surveillance, guarded, grilled. They call her Orphan of the Temple. She is 17, pale as salt, thin as parchment. She survives. That's all she does. Not thrive, not avenge. Just survives. They eventually release her in a prisoner exchange. She's sent to Austria, the same land that once handed you off like a package of exotic pastries. They say she wept when she crossed the border. They say she never mentioned her mother's name again. They say her silence was a blessing. Back in Paris, they bury your memory in concrete. Versailles is looted. Your portraits are burned. Your dresses are cut up into dust rags. Your garden is turned into a public park where men now piss on the roses. But even as they erase you, they can't stop painting you. New portraits emerge unauthorized, syrupy, gothic. You with haloed curls, you feeding birds in rags, you clasping your son at the scaffold, eyes cast upward like a biblical martyr. It's ironic. You died for being too rich, and now they paint you like a saint of the poor. Years pass. France changes outfits again and again. Monarchy, republic, empire, republic again like a manic debutante, unable to decide what dress to die in. Louis XVI, your dull-eyed brother-in-law, returns to the throne after Napoleon is shoved into exile. He wants to clean up history, smooth the guillotine scars, so in 1815 he orders your remains exhumed. They dig through the mass grave where they dumped you. Men in fine coats poke around with bone hooks and gloves. They pull up two skeletons, one large, one smaller, both jumbled with lime and filth. They claim one is you. How do they know? By the jawbone, the height, a scrap of linen still clinging to a rib. It doesn't matter if it's true, they need it to be true. So they dress the bones in velvet, place you in a coffin, hold a grand mass, and bury you for the second time in the royal tomb at Saint-Denis, under a sculpted canopy of angels who look down without blinking. Your tomb is impressive. Marble, inscribed. People weep when they see it. People spit too. It depends on the season. Some bring flowers, some bring pamphlets. One child leaves behind a tiny toy guillotine. You think at least he made it himself. The legend won't die. Not even when the monarchy finally collapses for good. Not even when they stop teaching the names of kings in schools. You survive in opera, in fashion, in film. People wear pastel wigs and call it Antoinette core. You become a Halloween costume, a drag queen, a niche Pinterest aesthetic, satin, blood, cake, always the cake. Let them eat cake. You never said it, but it follows you. Louder than your last words, louder than your trial, louder than the thud of the blade on your neck. It is your curse. 4 words you never uttered now carved above your story like an epitaph. You sometimes wonder who invented it. A rival, a pamphleteer, a bored monk with a flair for punchlines. Whoever it was, they gave you the most efficient obituary in history. And the least truthful. Zoom out. You were a girl who learned the price of ribbons before the value of food. You were a queen who danced while the world burned and then watched them light the match in your name. You were a mother who lost her son to a lie, and a wife who watched her husband unravel like soft bread in weak wine. And when they cut off your head, they thought it would feed the hunger. It didn't. The hunger grew. It always does. You would barely recognize her now. Tall, pale, still, eyes like winter glass. She walks slowly, like someone moving through a ruined cathedral, every step deliberate, as if afraid the ground might collapse under her. This is your daughter, Marie-Thérèse Charlotte, now 21, the last Bourbon, the last survivor, the last person on earth who remembers what your voice sounded like before it started trembling. They call her Madame Royale, though there is no court to receive her. She has returned to Vienna for safety, for air, for silence, but the silence is not kind. She carries it inside her body like an ulcer. She eats little, sleeps less. Some nights she wakes screaming not from dreams, but from the absence of sound. That was the worst part, she says. Not the shouting, not even the trial. The silence after her brother stopped calling her name. She remembers the temple prison too clearly. Your final days, her brother's withering skin, the mould in the corners, the guard with the sour breath who laughed too loudly and too long. She remembers the way they told her you were dead. Not with words, but with a closed door. She knocked, waited, knocked again. Then a man in a blue sash took her by the wrist and said, "You'll be going soon." She never asked where. She already knew. She never saw your body. She never saw your grave. She was told you died quickly, cleanly, with dignity. She doesn't believe them, because nothing in that prison was clean. She writes letters now, hundreds of them, to no one, to everyone, to you. She writes on thick paper, in slanted script, filling each line with memories that fall apart the moment she reads them back. Do you remember the blue gown with the lilies? Do you remember feeding the swans at Petit Trianon? Do you remember the way Papa laughed when he dropped the plate of oysters? You do, or rather she does. So she writes them down, as if that might preserve you from the acid of history. She's a curiosity in Austria, the Queen's orphan, the girl from the guillotine. When she walks, people whisper. Some bow, others spit. One child runs up to her and asks if she still has her mother's head. She does not slap him. She simply walks on. She receives marriage offers. Of course she does. She's still royal blood, still blue enough for some dynasties. She marries her cousin, Louis Antoine, the son of the Comte d'Artois. It is not love. It is barely friendship. But it is quiet. And that, she thinks, is the only happiness still available to her. They return to France under the Restoration. The monarchy is propped back up like a collapsed puppet, stiff limbs, empty crown. She walks into Versailles again for the first time in decades. The halls echo, the mirrors are dusty, the floorboards creak like old knees. She walks through the Queen's apartment slowly, alone. She touches the wall where your portrait once hung. There is a hole where the nail used to be. That's all. She stands in your old dressing room staring at the mirror, the same one they say your soul escaped through. She looks into it. Nothing stares back. Just a woman in black. A daughter with no mother. A name with no meaning. A queen who was never crowned. She speaks publicly only once. It is a simple statement. I forgive those who murdered my family, Mres, but I will never forget them. The room is silent. No one cheers. She lives to be 72, childless, widowed, exiled, then recalled, then exiled again. France changes again and again while she sits by the fire, knitting with fingers that remember the weight of your hand. She outlives everyone, the revolutionaries, the royalists, the historians. Even the myths begin to die before she does. And still, she dreams of you. In her final days, she stops writing, stops eating, stops rising from bed. A nurse finds her speaking aloud to someone who isn't there. She's whispering in German, her first language. Mother, she says. Are you cold? She dies on a rainy morning, the windows rattling softly. No state funeral, no parade. Just a note in the papers, Madame Royale, daughter of Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, has died. No heirs. Just like that. The last living witness to your story disappears. But not the story itself, and no, it changes. Historians take over. Some defend you. Others dissect you like a cadaver. Every gesture you ever made is catalogued. Every letter scrutinized. Your laugh analyzed. Your wardrobe tallied. Your womb. Your spine. Your teeth all written about like architecture. Was she shallow? Was she cruel? Did she know what she was doing? They argue over your favourite colour. They turn you into a diagram. And yet, in the dark corners of gift shops and old attics, a different version of you survives, in pressed flowers between old books, in a locket that once held a painted eye, in a crumbling playbill from a puppet show where your paperhead falls off to applause, and sometimes in the mirror when a woman ties her ribbon too tight and sees a ghost standing behind her, smiling faintly. Zoom out. A daughter carries a silence no revolution can erase. A woman survives a story written for her and lives too long to correct it. The queen is gone. The child is gone, but the mirror remains, and it still knows your name. Versailles doesn't breathe anymore. It echoes. Long corridors you once drifted through in satin now hum with insects and mildew. The air tastes like old lace, bitter and dry. Gilded doors creak open to empty rooms where kings once sneezed in powdered elegance, and footmen stood like obedient statues. The dust settles like powdered sugar across the banisters, as if mocking the palaces of the past. No one lives here now. Not really. Just shadows. And tour guides. You walk the halls again, but now as memory. You pass through the Queen's chambers. The tapestries are faded, the perfume bottles empty. The guards are mannequins now, plastic men in stiff uniforms posed with papier-mâché dignity. Visitors shuffle past, phones in hand, quietly whispering. This was her room. Right. They do not speak your name. They just call you her. Like a ghost they're afraid to summon too directly. The bed you once gave birth in is now cordoned off by velvet rope. On the plaque, this is where Marie Antoinette bore her children before the revolution. As if that was the only thing you did here. No mention of the sleepless nights, of the cold tile against your back when you collapsed from fear, of the sour milk they gave you when you were too weak to stand, of the window you stared out, wondering if your mother had made a mistake sending you here. They've stripped it of pain, polished it into nostalgia, like everyone does when they're finally safe from the things they pretend to admire. A little girl stares through the ropes. She's in a blue dress, braided hair, white shoes. She leans too far and her mother tugs her back. The child whispers, "Where did she go?" The mother doesn't answer, because no one ever knows what to say. Outside, the gardens bloom. Perfect, symmetrical, blindingly artificial. You used to walk here, didn't you? Trying to breathe, to escape the court's claws for a few minutes of air. They laughed when you built Petit Trianon, called it your peasant playhouse, a dollhouse for a woman who wanted the real world without the smell. But it wasn't play. It was the only place you ever felt safe, where you could sit in linen, barefoot, holding your child's sticky hand, feeding geese and pretending the sky wasn't made of powdered wigs and politics. Now the Petit Trianon is a museum, a frozen diorama of your longing. A woman in a headset lectures a group of retirees. She tried to escape her duties here, to play shepherdess, as if that's a crime, as if wanting simplicity when the world gnaws at your throat is privilege, not survival. You're everywhere now, but only in pieces, a fan under glass, a cracked tea set, a letter, faded by time and tobacco stains, labelled possibly her hand. Possibly. They're not sure anymore. The curators don't care. It's the myth that sells. And sell you they do? In the gift shop, your face is on magnets, tote bags, scented candles. You smirking pastel, airbrushed, ironically decapitated. One mug says, "Let them drink tea." Another has your face beside the Eiffel Tower. You never even saw the Eiffel Tower. It didn't exist until long after your bones turned to dust. But no one checks. No one cares. The cash register dings. The tourists smile. The past is repackaged into something cute. And your blood, once spilled into the Paris gutters, is now rose-scented bathwater. It's not just Versailles. You haunt Paris, too. At the conciergerie, your prison cell is a display case. A wax figure in a dim room, kneeling beside a wooden cot. You, in a rough shift, eyes cast downward. She looks nothing like you. Her expression is too clean. They didn't sculpt the bruises, or the cold, or the look you gave the wall the night they took your son away. They made you look gentle, because people sleep better when women die politely. But the floor remembers. The stones are the same. A guard once claimed that when the last visitor leaves and the lights go out, the cot creaks, and someone whispers in German. They say it's nothing. The guide rolls his eyes, but the cleaning lady won't mop that corner anymore. Zoom out. Versailles is still beautiful, so beautiful it hurts. But it is no longer yours. The mirrors reflect strangers. The chandeliers flicker over faces that will never know what it meant to wake up to revolution in a golden bed. The wind that once rustled your curtains now rattles brochures, and the only person who still calls you Mama is the echo that no one else hears. But you remain, not because they love you, not because they hate you, but because they can't stop needing you. You're a compass that points toward catastrophe. A lesson no one quite learns. A joke that keeps being told at dinner tables that still have no bread. You're the girl who didn't say let them eat cake, but lost her head anyway. And somewhere, deep beneath Saint-Denis, your bones listen. They are clean now, dressed in velvet, labelled. They have forgiven nothing. The candle gutters low beside your bed now. Its flame flickers not with urgency, but with memory. Outside, a breeze tiptoes through the leaves like footsteps on silk. The kind of wind that might carry a powdered sigh, or a name once whispered in a gilded hallway. Marie, a name once shouted by courtiers, screamed by crowds, scribbled by pamphleteers in rage, now just syllables softened by time. Marie, a girl who became a queen who became a ghost, and a ghost who became a story. The mirrors are quiet now, the ones in Versailles, the one in your old prison cell, the one you sometimes glance at, alone in your room, wondering why it feels like someone's just left. They all still hold her shape. Not clearly, just the suggestion of lace and breath and worry. She doesn't knock. She doesn't need to. She's been here a long time. You feel the velvet of the chair cool beneath you. The room is hushed, as if Versailles herself has taken a final breath and closed her eyes. The gold leaf flakes in silence. The portraits sag gently in their frames. The ribbons are untied. The ghosts at last have finished rehearsing. Sleep now. The court is scattered. The blade is rusted. The roses have bloomed again at Petit Trianon, and in the dark soil beneath Saint-Denis, something ancient and gentle has stopped waiting. Shh, she's gone.